I mean, how do you say horse shit politely? Because that's what this Western media spin is. I just got back from 3 weeks in Russia, including 10 days in the SMO territories, where I witnessed firsthand, sometimes up close and personal, closer and more personal than I wanted to, perhaps, the reality of drone warfare and what's happening there. There can be no doubt that Ukraine has launched a massive drone campaign against Russia that is basically designed to accomplish a couple things. First and foremost, it is to create the perception of Ukrainian resilience that then feeds into the notion of a shifting in strategic initiative away from Russia to Ukraine, and then helps promote the notion of the potential of Ukrainian victory. And this has all been in place since May, designed to reach the crescendo right before the NATO summit, so that we can get the United States and Europe to commit to the inevitability of Ukrainian victory and provide resources that would extend this conflict even longer, in the vain hope that the wishful thinking that attaches itself to this propaganda that Russia is becoming weaker actually becomes reality. Perceptions do create their own realities in the minds of those who perceive, but it doesn't mean it translates that way onto the ground. I can't speak to the specifics of Russia's energy situation. The president of Russia has addressed those issues, and I have no reason to doubt him. I can say this, that I arrived in St. Petersburg on the morning of June 3rd, and the city was attacked by over 50 drones that morning. The targets in Kronstadt were on fire, black smoke in the sky. I didn't see it. By the time I got off the train, it had already cleared away, and the people of St. Petersburg scurried along their normal selves, not worried about this. It was, entertainment for a moment. But, if you looked at the headlines in the West, I mean, St. Petersburg was on fire, ablaze. Defenseless Russian people cowering in their basements. No, that's not the case at all. The day I left St. Petersburg, June 6th, the city was once again under Ukrainian drone attack. I don't think the people of St. Petersburg even noticed. That's how much this meant. You get to Moscow, and again, it's under drone attack. I head to the special military operation, and I have to tell you, we arrived in Lugansk on the evening of June 8th. We went to the restaurant, and the entire meal was interrupted by air raid sirens, including explosions. The city was under attack, drone attack, part of the Ukrainian drone offensive. We went to Starobelsk the next day to visit the college that had been attacked by Ukrainian drones on May 22nd, murdering 21 sleeping students. And the Ukrainians attacked Starobelsk, about a block and a half away from where we were. 2 drones struck, prompting our evacuation. So, it's real. We went to Gorlovka, had to drive under the drone nets, had to do a sprint through an area where there was imminent threat of Ukrainian drone attack. We had to scan the sky for drones. We had a plan of action if the drone was spotted, how to get the hell out of the car and hope that we could get far enough away not to absorb shrapnel. It's a real thing. There were burned out cars, burned out trucks, burned out gas stations, burned out gasoline vehicles. This is the reality of it. The same thing when we got to Melitopol. I was supposed to go visit the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Couldn't. The road connecting Melitopol with the nuclear power plant was under constant drone attack. It was just deemed to be far too dangerous, even though I said, I don't care, I want to visit. It was an irresponsible thing for me to say, because if the Russians had said, okay, we'll take you, that means they're putting other people's lives at risk for my pride, for my hubris, for my arrogance. Thank God they're rational people. And they said, no, it's just too dangerous. In Melitopol, the city was attacked every night we were there. Most of the city was without electricity, without water, but the city lived on. I spoke at Melitopol State University, and there were students, hundreds of students in the audience. These are students who go home to houses without power. These are students who go home with homes without water. These are students who live in an environment where they understand that therefore, for the grace of God, go them, meaning that the 21 students who died in Starobelsk could very well have been 21 students from Melitopol State University, but they don't give up. And that's the point. In all of this, everything the Ukrainians are doing, the Russians are just shrugging it off. Is it inconvenient? Yes, it is inconvenient. Is it scaring the Russians? Well, I mean, I'm not going to pretend the Russians aren't concerned, but I'm telling you, they wake up every morning and they just get on with their lives. And it just is what it is. And then I met with Russian military people specializing in drone warfare. That was one of the main focuses of this tour, was to visit Russian drone units and talk about the reality of drone warfare, making a documentary film that hopefully will manifest itself sometime in the near future. The Russians are fully cognizant of what's going on. I had open conversation with them about drone warfare. You know, they acknowledge the difficulties that they face. The Ukrainians are very good, very skilled operators, and they are receiving a tremendous amount of advanced technologies from the West. And drones are all about technologies. And if you can bring in sufficient quantities of high technology drones, you're going to have an advantage. And the Ukrainians are just flooding the zone with drones. The Russians make up for it with grit, determination, and skill, and they've evened out the playing field. But it's a very tough touch and go situation there. The drones that struck Starobelsk were guided in by Starlink antennas provided by Elon Musk. So yes, Elon Musk, you're a murdering sack of shit, son of a bitch who deserves to fry in hell for what you've done. There's no forgiving you for what you've done. You claim that Starlink is a civilian network providing internet connectivity for the masses. You murdered 21 sleeping girls, Elon Musk. That's on you, you sack of manure. We were in Melitopol, and the convoy we were in got hit by Hornets. Hornets are drones that are funded by Eric Schmidt, head of Google. Eric Schmidt, you and I are going to have a meeting one day, and I'm going to remind you just how stupid and criminal your actions are. You murdering, again, I have no love lost for these guys. There's no excuse for what they're doing. They are empowering the Ukrainians to commit acts of terrorism against Russian civilians. The Hornet drones are being used almost exclusively against civilian targets. There's no military rationale or no military justification for what's being done. It's purely an act of terrorism designed to strike fear into the heart of a people who can't have fear struck into them. Let me remind people that the people of the Donbass have been living under fire since 2014. It's not like they woke up, 4 years ago and went, oh crap, war. No, they've been at war for a long time, and they know war. And this just isn't bothering them. The Russian forces are kicking ass, seriously, straight up crushing the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians are flying all these drones. But one thing that's happening is the Russians are sitting there monitoring them. And they're taking hits. I'm not pretending otherwise. I'm not here saying the Ukrainians aren't doing it. The Ukrainians are blowing up a lot of stuff, killing a lot of people, mainly civilians. On the front line, it's very tough. Very tough. But, people in the West, I read the stupidity of the chat. Not yours. I'm not picking on them today because I haven't read them yet. Maybe I will, because I'm in a really bad mood and I'd love nothing more to get in a fight with somebody over a stupid chat. But the point is, I got to calm down. The fact is, though, that there's people out there who are like, oh, the Russians are only advancing a kilometer. They're very slow pace. When the war first started, the gray zone that separated the militaries was defined by the maximum range of the weaponry available. So if it's an infantry-based war, you're basically the zone separating you is the maximum effective range of your machine guns or your rifles. You bring in your armor, now you extend that. So you're talking about a gray zone of 1 to 2 kilometers separating the zone. So if I were to attack you, I've got to cross my line of departure and advance through a gray zone, 1 or 2 kilometers, where I'm going to come under fire from your, in World War I, you've seen the World War I movies where the guys go over the trench line. They have to go through a gray zone to get to the other trench. That's the gray zone. And while you're doing that, you get hit with artillery, machine gun fire, etc. Today with drones, the gray zone is 60 kilometers wide sometimes. 60. So in order to advance in, you've got to go through 60 kilometers of hell. Drone strikes, artillery strikes guided by drones observing. So when we say the Russians are advancing a kilometer a day, they're advancing 62 kilometers a day because they have to go through the gray zone, fight through the gray zone, close with the Ukrainian positions, and then continue their advance. People have no clue what they're talking about whatsoever about the reality of this war, how hard it is. It's extraordinarily hard, but how good the Russians are. And I don't mean good just in terms of their military proficiency, but as the Russians advance, they're coming upon village after village after village of places that were populated by civilians, Russian speakers who consider themselves to be Russian, who don't want to leave. The Ukrainians mock them. They call them zhdun, the waiters. And mainly these are old people or kids, and they hide in basements. And the Ukrainians mock them and laugh at them. And when they come out for water, the Ukrainians kill them. They let them starve to death there. The Russian soldiers come in and rescue these people. They come in and they realize you can't evacuate them initially, so they secure the position. Then they bring in food and water and medicine to care for these people. When the time comes, they try to evacuate them. Oftentimes they get attacked, and the Russians cover the bodies of these elderly with their own bodies, absorbing the bullets, absorbing the shrapnel, absorbing the drones, getting wounded, dying. I went to a refugee camp where I talked to, a room full of elderly people who should be retired, tending to their gardens. Instead, they've lost everything, and they're now sitting in a dormitory, being well cared for, but you lost everything. These people, some of them couldn't even talk about it. I tried to engage them. They just break down in tears. But when they talked about the Russian soldiers, and they're funny because they're like, the bureaucracy is slow. I need more of this. I need more of that. I mean, just like anybody would do. It's normal old people complaints. I complain like that. I'm an old person. But so they're complaining. But then as soon as you mention the Russian soldiers, they just well up in tears. They're like, these guys saved our lives. And they talk about how the Russian soldiers surrounded them with their bodies. And my God, the Russian soldiers are good. They're good people. They're good soldiers. They're good warriors, and they're winning. And that's what this entire Ukrainian propaganda exercise can't undo. You can have, people spin Vladimir Putin's words any way you want. What you can't undo is the fact that yesterday Russia liberated a number of villages and towns, that Russia eliminated several brigades of Ukrainian manpower, that Russia advanced another several kilometers deep in, and Russia's closing in on the final urban defensive belt that exists in the Donbass. And they will take Slavyansk, they will take Kramatorsk, and then the Donbass will be captured, and they'll keep advancing because Ukrainians can't stop them. And now for the Ukrainian drone operators, the drone operators there, they're very good, but drone operators operate from a fixed location. That's one thing that came across to me. I thought the drone operators would be mobile and maneuvering in there. No, the drone operators pick a fixed location and they get locked in there, and then they offset their antennas with wires and lines and all that stuff. But they're running their drones. They have to be careful though, because the enemy's looking for them. The Ukrainians are looking for the Russians. The Russians are looking for the Ukrainians. The Russians have a specialty unit called Rubicon that specializes in this sort of thing. And so when the Ukrainians launch this big drone attack, understand there's a drone operator somewhere guiding it. And he's going to be in that position for 10 to 14 days before he rotates out. And one of those days, he's going to fuck up. All right? He's supposed to have a trash bin where he drinks his water. And then he's supposed to put the empty plastic bottle in the trash bin to disguise his presence. But they get lazy. About day 8, he's drinking the water. He's focused on something, and he throws it at the trash bin. It hits the lid, rolls out underneath the tree cover. And a Russian drone operator goes, plastic bottle. Got to you, son of a bitch. And then they track it in. Immediately, 3 to 5 FAB 500 kilogram bombs on saying, kill everybody. This happens over and over every single day. It's the most dangerous job in the war, Ukrainian drone operator. They're dying by the bushelful because they're out there flooding the zone, but they're flooding the zone in a marketplace where the Russians are monitoring everything they do, and the Russians are singularly focused on killing them. Now, the Russians make mistakes too, and the Ukrainians kill them. It's a hard war being fought, but the Russians are winning this war decisively. I went to drone development centers and looked at what the Russians are doing in terms of developing the technology that Vladimir Putin spoke up to shoot down, Ukrainian drones, and they have the technology now. They just have to take it to scale, and that's what the Russians are working on. We went to one place, the Arkhangelsk Drone Research Center. They've recently signed a deal with Kalishnikov out of Izhevsk to take their design and mass produce it and get it in the hands of the soldiers. And there's other innovation centers. Dmitry Rogozhin, the former head of Roscosmos, runs a combat unit called BARS Sarmat. BARS is the Russian abbreviation for Reserve Forces. Sarmat is the name that he picked for it because he helped develop the Sarmat heavy ICBM, and he just brought that along with him, basically implying that I'm going to kick your ass, and he is. And there's other research centers too. The Russians are on top of this, and that's what people don't understand. You're out there reading the Wall Street Journal. You're out there reading the Kiev Post. You're out there reading the New York Times. You're out there reading just stupidity. Guys, don't believe me. Go yourself if you have the balls, okay? Because I'll tell you what, it takes a pair of balls to go there right now. Had I realized how bad it was going to be, I may not have done it because there was a period of time where you're sitting there going, wow, if this goes bad, I mean, when look, my driver was a veteran special forces guy, this sort of a Russian Delta Force type equivalent, cool character. But when he is sitting there, because of it, basically, if a drone's coming at you head on, you're dead. There's nothing you can do. You're going to die. And so don't even bother looking in front of you, because if you see the drone coming at you, just wave. Maybe they'll catch you on camera. And your mom can see your face. Put a smile on it, because the Ukrainians love to record your face and put it out there. So rather than looking scared, just smile, give them the finger, do something, but you're going to die. That's just the way it's going to be. But if you scan to your left and your right, you can catch the drone coming, and you may have time to get out, to bail out of the car. The drone's coming after the vehicle, not necessarily the people. So if you could get out in time and separate when they hit it, you might only get a couple holes in your back and your ass and your legs. That's the reality. But that's if the drone comes in on the horizon. But if the drone comes in on the tree line, by the time you see it through the tree line, it's too late. It's right there on you, and you're about 2 seconds away from dying. Well, we're driving in parts of Zaporozhye where it's relatively flat, but you have tree lines. And you know what looks like a drone coming at you? A frickin' crow flying straight out of the tree line. And there were a couple times where we're driving, all of a sudden, here comes a crow, and this guy's like, curse, because he just thought he was dead. He was like, shit, I'm dead, because that's what it looked like. We all just jumped. We're like, shit, we died. No, we didn't. Thank God it was a bird, but it could have been a drone. We only had to go through one day of that, getting out of there. The people that live there go through this every single day, and they don't quit. They tell jokes. They have great humor. Gasoline is tough. There's no doubt about that. The Ukrainians have been blowing up gas station. The convoy that we were in, the reason why it got hit was that there were 5, gasoline tankers there. Now, they had the thing that saved us is that they had the gun trucks, and the gun trucks were able to shoot down the drone. But, the Ukrainians were targeting that. But the thing about these drones that Eric Schmidt provided with them, these Hornet drones, is they have AI built into them. So they come in and they get guided in there, and then they get into a search routine. And so basically it's just freaking Russian roulette. You're driving down a highway of death, and you just, it's when the drone pattern, if you're under the drone pattern, when it's there, it got you, you're dead. Or you can bail out of your car and run. If it's out maneuvering past and you drive through there, you get to live. It's Russian roulette every single day. Now, the AI in the drone is telling it gives it certain things to look for. So it's prioritize military vehicles, gas tankers, things of that nature. But drones, especially like the Hornet, they're battery driven. It's the battery life. And as the battery comes down to around 20%, the AI clicks into automatic kill mode, which means it's no longer searching for something that could be military. It says kill the first thing you see, which more often than not is a civilian vehicle. And that's the reality. That's why you see cars hit and all that. So, these drones are they're literal terrorist tools. So Eric Schmidt is a terrorist. Google is a terrorist organization. And I wish the United States would prosecute them to the full extent of the law.